everyone, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from the kitchen of the Grow Together homestead, where I'm doing a little bit of my winter sowing and planting up for the upcoming spring season. This video today I wanted to create as part of my challenge to create some educational videos for the Global Gardening and Homesteading Community Challenge that I'm participating in this year. I'm on Team Homestead Aquarius, and I thought this would be a great opportunity, since I'm planting up today anyways, to explain what winter sowing is for those who haven't done it before, and in particular a process called winter sowing in place. Because winter sowing is wonderful. It's a great way of extending the season. It's a great way to create hardy seedlings that don't need hardening off or a lot of extra work. But you still have to transplant those when you do your winter sowing in more traditional containers, like the milk jug. And I've got lots of videos on that if you are interested in it. And I still do hundreds of these every year. Or these are great too, these smaller water cooler bottles. But let's say you don't like transplanting, or let's say you don't have a big garden to put all these seedlings in, and you still want to take advantage of the winter sowing process. I really love this technique, using good old-fashioned water cooler bottles for creating winter sowing in place containers. Now, last year is the first year that I tried doing this particular technique, and yeah, I went a little crazy. Here's a little image here of the winter sowing in place garden that I created just outside my back door as my sort of kitchen cutting garden, and this is it here. So as you can see, I did create quite a bit there, and that photo was taken at the end of May. Fortunately, I was dumb and didn't take photos of what that garden looked like when it was in full glory and all of the lids taken off. But those were all planted up with wonderful things that I could use immediately. I called it my kitchen cutting garden. So it was full of things like herbs and greens and edible flowers and wonderful things that I could just go outside and quickly snip and use in my kitchen. Obviously, I loved it because I'm doing it again this year. And the other thing that's wonderful about it is, whereas these containers, these milk jugs, they're great, but here in my harsh southern Alberta conditions, after one season, I do find that I need to recycle these because they get too brittle otherwise, and these don't last very well either. But these were out all year long. I didn't even bring them in at the end of the season. They've been sitting on my deck for a year now, and they're in great shape. So I'm just going to reuse these. So that's a really great way of doing some upcycling that you don't even have to recycle after 1 year. We'll see, maybe I might need to recycle these after 2 years. That's enough of me talking about why I love it. Maybe now I can show you how it works. What is really important to do with any of your winter sowing containers, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. You need to make sure there's really good drainage. So for the milk jug bottles, I tend to poke at least 12 holes in the bottom of these. And I also, you cut them open this way. That is very easily done with a corkscrew and some scissors. I also poked a bunch of holes in the bottom of these. For that, I used the scissors and a knife, and it worked really well. And I opened it up with the scissors as well. You want to ensure that you're using really good soil. I know a lot of people say, well, for seed starting, you don't want to use anything with too much nutrition in it. But this is different. It's not just strictly seed starting, because you are keeping these containers, whether it be your traditional milk jugs that you're going to be transplanting your seedlings in, those are going to be in there for a lot longer than a traditional seed starting situation, because we're avoiding the whole potting up process. So I like to use a nice soil that does have a mild organic fertilizer, but it's still nice and light. And I'm also using that in here because this is actually going to be, I'm not transplanting these plants at all. They're going to be staying in here. So I have once again chosen a really nice garden soil with some compost in it to help keep these plants nourished while they're in there. Make sure when you're planting these up that you are trying to follow the seed pack instructions as much as possible. I know that in some cases folks just sort of sprinkle a whole pack in there. You're going to end up with seedling overload if you do that, especially if you have to transplant them later. That's going to be, you could lose some seedlings to too much roots entanglement. So I actually I don't like wasting seeds. They're precious to me. So I try to place them in here as carefully as possible and at the depth that they suggest. I know it takes a little extra time, but I find that step when I'm doing my initial planting is really great at saving me a lot of time and heartache later. I also make sure that my soil is really well moistened prior to putting it even in these jugs, because I want to have that cold stratification work, which requires not just cold, but it also requires moisture. I'm going to be placing these jugs out where they're going to have exposure to precipitation and some moisture, but it is best to start out with a really nice, well-moistened soil, rich soil to begin with. Good choices for winter sowing. Well, here in southern Alberta, we're in what I call peak winter sowing season because we still have a lot of winter left. We still got snow on the ground, but hopefully we're past the very, very worst of the super cold weather, and it's unlikely that our temperatures are going to get much colder than, say, -10, -50. I can still do my hardy perennials, which is what some people all day do with their winter sowing, is hardy perennials. But now is also when I can start planting my veggies and other things that aren't quite so hardy. I will wait another few weeks before I start planting any of my heat-loving stuff. But for now, today, I'm going to plant a whole bunch more herbs, and I'm going to be planting some more greens, and I'm also going to do a really fun experiment with garlic. I have done experiments with garlic before where I placed them in milk jugs to see if they work, and they didn't. So I figured that's not going to work. But I have a very good friend who's also a winter sower, and she's done it in these types of larger containers and gotten full bulbs, putting them out around this time of the year. So I'm going to give it a try. Why not, right? Winter sowing is all about doing some fun, different things to try and see if we can make our season work better. And here in southern Alberta, every little bit I can do will help, because I do have sometimes less than 90 days between frosts here where I live. I do have some garlic that I placed out in the garden in October, but you can never have enough of this stuff. So I'm going to put a few bulbs in here with my mixed greens, and we'll see what happens. I will let you guys know if it works, but that is one of the other experiments I'm going to do today. Now, another really wonderful thing about these water cooler bottles when you're doing them is the hail protection that you get. Because as you can see here, I've got quite a bit of room for my plants to grow. So last year I didn't remove these lids well into June. Some of the more tender stuff I left these lids on until almost July. And where I live, we have notorious hail. It hails like crazy here. And I know I almost felt guilty for my little kitchen garden here on my, had lots of early hail last year. And I know a lot of my gardening friends were devastated because a lot of their stuff they had just put out had been destroyed because it wasn't expected. But nothing of mine was harmed at all. These wonderful bottles were so hardy and they maintained those plants. So I basically didn't take these lids off until the plants just started to peek through. By then, those really, really cold nights that we do get here in southern Alberta with the mountain breezes were almost over. And so even my heat-loving stuff was doing really, really well in these bottles. So yes, that's another reason to love this winter sowing in place. If you have a deck, if you don't have a garden, you don't have a yard, but you do have a deck, which you can get some of these on, you can grow some of your own food. And as you can see with that photo, I'll show it to you again. I repurposed some plant shelving from the back of Canadian Tire, and I was able to get a lot of these bottles out. I had a ton of food growing right there in that little space. It might be something that's worth trying for you. So today I'm going to I'm going to pop these garlic cloves in there. Even if I don't manage to get full heads of garlic out of these, I can still eat the greens, right? And I can maybe get some scapes, and those are worth it too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant these up. I'm then going to label everything really well. That's something to keep in mind with winter sowing. I really like these paint pens that I got from Michael's, but I am looking for one of those grease markers that they put on cattle tags, because I've been told those are the best ones. I keep forgetting to get it when I go to the feed store though. And I'm going to tape these up once they're all ready to go with a little bit of duct tape. use a good quality duct tape, but don't use the Gorilla tape because it's too good. It's almost impossible to take it off, but you don't want to cheap out and get the dollar store. You want to get decent type, and then you put these out in the snow. They do require a little bottom watering once the seedlings come up, and basically there are whole other videos on that, and I will also make more videos about that as the season comes along. But my goodness, the amount of time this saves me and the amount of worry from when I used to do seedlings under lights. If you left those alone for a couple of days, you'd lose a lot of stuff. But I find that this is, for a busy single mom like myself, this is a great way for me to get a lot done with making it look like I've got an amazing green thumb, but really I'm letting Mother Nature do the work for me. I hope that that's helpful. Please do ask questions. I'm very excited about this homesteading challenge that I'm participating in this year, and I'll be sharing more about that as I go along. We're going to be weighing our food that we produce. So I've got some eggs. Duck eggs are bigger too, so they're great for weighing in. And if there's other things that you're interested in seeing here on the homestead, please let me know, because I do like to create content that's helpful for you. And as always, I hope you'll take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.